Welcome to But Enough About Me, a podcast about other people. My name is Tyler Andrews. I'm a Nashville-based photographer, husband, and father. I'm trying to collect the stories of everyone around me, whether we're best friends or total strangers. I want to know what made you the person you are today. Welcome back to the show, guys. I am so excited to be here. It's been a whale of a time trying to make this happen. I had a neighbor cutting down a tree with a chainsaw very close. Can't mask that sound out. You're going to hear that, so I had to wait for that to end. I've had technical difficulties of my microphones and sound settings all being jacked up because I've been using the same gear to do Zoom calls. You know, because America 2020. Long story short, it's been a whale of a morning, but we're here. And I am so excited because you get to hear someone's story. So if you, like me, are ready to talk to someone who doesn't share your last name, you're in luck. If you want to hear someone's voice who you've never heard before, well, I can't help you there. And the reason is today's guest, his voice has been heard in a million different places, and you have probably heard his voice sometime in the last, 30 years. I can say that confidently because my guest is in commercial music. For those of you that don't know, that means the music that goes behind, literally, television and radio commercials, as well as things like film scores and TV shows and all of that. If it has music in the background, it's possible that today's guest made it. And if it's catchy and singable, and you remember it from when you were a kid, because it's that catchy, there's a strong possibility that my guest is responsible for it. Today's guest is the creative director and president of Hummingbird Productions. You can find them at hummingbirdproductions.com. They are a Nashville-based commercial music agency. Today's guest is not just a creative director and president, he is also a father and a husband. He's won awards for his work in the commercial music industry, and I can't believe I get to say these words. He's also given a TED Talk. Yes, I have a guest on my show who's given a TED Talk. This is the next to last episode of the first season of this show. I couldn't be more proud, and I couldn't be more pleased that I get to introduce you guys to my new friend, Mr. Bob Farnsworth.
Boy, this is for everybody out there in Radio Land. No, there's no Radio Land anymore. It's in what kind of land is it now? Podcast Land. Okay, yeah. That this is the nicest setup that Tyler has here. Very nice, comfortable studio he has here.
Well, thank you. We're going to just skip your story and let you talk about me for a while and say
That's
nice
what
things.
I was thinking about doing. Yeah. Because I've heard so many great things about you. Let's talk about Tyler.
No, that's not. So, Bob, thank you for coming. I just want to know your story.
Okay.
When were you born?
Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Bob. Let's say, well, I was born in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
And if you really want to start that far back, we lived on a farm on a hill that overlooked a cornfield.
Yeah.
There were 6 boys in our family, no girls. My mother named the first 5 of us Mary Elizabeth and gave up on it. And she didn't bother to try to name the 6th one Mary Elizabeth. But you can imagine how many grandchildren there are that are named Elizabeth, Mary Elizabeth,
That's
Mary
fantastic.
Beth, every version of that you can imagine. But because we lived on this hill overlooking the cornfield,
mm-hmm.
And my name was Bob, all my brothers called me Bob Corncob. So I was Corncob, right?
Yeah.
Bob Corncob. And I don't remember this, but my parents told me that when I was 4 years old, and back in the days of drive-in theaters, we were all packed into one car, Mom and Dad and the 6 boys, and we're watching this movie. And at the halftime, we go up to the little brick building where they serve refreshments. And Bob Corncob noticed the door open to where they changed the reel on the film. So I wandered in there and was absolutely fascinated by this big machine, and this guy's changing this big reel off. And I quietly sat there, unknown to him, the whole time he was doing that. So when he was done, I went back out into the little lobby where they were serving the refreshments, and guess who was gone? My entire family was gone. I was in there by myself. And so I started crying, and then the guy in the film room came out and said, "Well, what's wrong, son?" I said, "What do you think's wrong? I'm lost." No, I didn't say I was 4 years old. I said, I'm lost. And he says, "Well, it's okay. I'm sure your parents are around here somewhere. So what's your name?" And I said, "Bob." He said, "Well, what's your last name?" And I said, "Corn Cob." And so they've already started the movie back up.
Right.
This guy gets on the intercom, interrupts the movie, and said, "Would Mr. and Mrs. Corn Cob please come get your son?"
That's fantastic.
Isn't that a cute story? And they found me. My dad, they heard that announcement, and my dad looked over in the back seat, and Corn Cob was missing.
So where are you in the family line?
I'm number 5.
Number 5. Okay. So you were the last Mary Elizabeth.
Absolutely. I never thought about that. I would have been the last Mary Elizabeth. That's right.
That's great. What did your folks do? What did your dad do?
My dad was an estate planner,
Okay.
and my mother, wow, probably one of the greatest musicians South Carolina has ever had. She had perfect pitch. She's 94 now.
Nice.
Still plays piano. Perfect pitch, which a lot of people hear that thrown around, but perfect pitch doesn't mean somebody sings a note, ah, and you go, ah, and nail that pitch.
No.
Perfect pitch means I can go, whatever. That's plastic.
It's plastic.
But
Sorry.
you can hit a piece of wood almost, and if there's a tonality to it, that person can tell you what that note is.
Right.
And go play it on the piano.
Yeah.
I would be practicing piano when I was a kid, and I'd be playing some fast passage, and I'd hear my mother at the other end of the house. It's so ironic because she was an opera singer, right?
Okay.
And had a full scholarship to Juilliard.
Nice.
And gave it up when she started having children. And she would be at the other end of the house, and I'd be, let's say I'm playing some fast passages, and I'd hear this voice saying, "Bob, that second measure, that third 16th note in the right hand, that's going to be a G sharp." And as a kid, you're thinking, you look at it up and you realize, oh, I didn't realize I was in the key, whatever.
Right.
And you realize as a kid, oh my gosh, how did she, that was like miraculous to a kid. You don't understand that. And really, there is a mystery to it. My mother talks about tones being a color. She could sort of see a color and identify it that way. I've got great relative pitches. Somebody says, pop is your note. I know that pop is a fourth, or pop is a fifth, or whatever. But it doesn't matter what the deal is. And of course, there are disadvantages to that, because if you're in a choir, and you know what the pitch needs to be, and all of a sudden they're going to do an a cappella section where the instrument goes out, and and so the choir starts sagging. This is a natural tendency to sag in your pitch, and so the choir sags, and she would be going crazy because she doesn't know how to sag. I mean, it's the pitch is the pitch. It'd be like something being red, and everybody else is turning it into green, and you go, wait, it's supposed to be red. What are y'all doing? So there are disadvantages to it, but mostly there are advantages. And I've only worked with a handful of people in my entire career, and worked with thousands of musicians, and only a small handful of those have true perfect pitch, and she was one of them. She would play by ear, and she sight read as well, extremely well. It's just one of those freaks of nature.
That's awesome. That's super. So
I say one sentence on my dad, and I give all that diatribe about my mother. My dad was a remarkable guy. I don't mean to shortchange him. He was an amazing businessman.
That's awesome. But I mean, it makes sense because you're a musician.
Well, that's true.
And so
I'm cheating in that side.
Okay, that makes sense.
Fair.
Tell me about school. Were you a good student?
Well, I was, but I want to qualify that. I was because I was just fascinated by words and science, and it was more of an interest thing. Where my brother Rick, for example, did not do well. He was the brother right above me. He did not do well in grades, and yet he was a geology major at University of Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And all he dreamed about was going out. He was a great athlete, and he just dreamed about being outside. And so he didn't. And so did I. I played sports, but he and another brother played football for University of Georgia as running backs. So I mean, Rick was very much not interested in being in that classroom, and yet when it came to rocks, it was unbelievable. And we had amazing rock collection. We had a whole rock room in the attic of our house. And he would get us to go on rock trips and, get my mother to take us places. And we had an extraordinary collection because my mother really wanted him to follow up. Whatever we wanted to do, she tried to encourage whatever that was. She was an amazing mother. And so when it came to geology, I'm just saying, whether it's sedimentary, metamorphic, or igneous rocks or whatever, I mean, it didn't matter how big the word was when it came to rock identification. So it's just,
Yeah.
So you asked me about grades. It was because I was interested.
Yeah.
And yet my brother wasn't a good grade person, but he was very interested in that. So
Sure.
So why do you ask a question like that?
Because sometimes people have strong reactions.
Like they don't want to say
No,
that, or...
like, oh, I was awful in school, or I was a straight A student,
Yeah.
And they find some element of their identity in that.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay.
And they're just jumping off points. If I say that and it sends you talking about your brother's rock collection, that's awesome.
I hate to say it, but it doesn't take a whole lot to send me off on a rabbit trail. I'll guarantee you there will probably be at some point when we're chatting today that I will say, no, what was your original question? Because we're 3 rabbit trails away.
So, okay.
And forgive my cough.
That's all right.
Is that I'm overcoming a cold.
You didn't say when you were born. What year were you born in?
1952.
Okay.
January the 1st. And my wife
Really?
is 10 years younger than me, and she was born on December the 31st. So we have a New Year's baby.
Man.
And a Christmas. Well, I mean, thank you.
Yes, New Year's Day.
And New Year's Eve and a New Year's Day. Exactly 10. So I get to say to my wife, "You're only 9 years older than me today."
Yeah.
And then the next day, we're back to 10 years.
Midnight must be a very exciting time in your house.
It is. Yeah, it's fun. But I guess the old thing about, and maybe it was our family, we were not so much into birthdays. It's been a special day. It's kind of every day was special.
Yeah.
There was a lot of love in our family. And our birthday, it wasn't like you were all of a sudden this wonderful person on a birthday. Our folks, and I think each other made each other feel like everybody was pretty wonderful.
That's
I mean, there
cool.
wasn't a lot of conflict. Of course,
Sure.
6 boys. Are you kidding?
Yeah, well, so what was that like? What was the dynamic in the house like amongst the 5, 6 of you?
Well, we range in the spectrum.
Right.
The oldest was an atheist, homosexual, who took his life when his gay lover left him at 40 years old, or 40-ish. And then my brother David is an estate planner and very much a comedian.
Okay.
My brother Steve was really an estate planner, interestingly enough. My brother Jimmy, the one who passed away, was a brilliant musician, super intelligent guy, and we loved him to pieces. It was a great loss.
Yeah.
And then David, and then Steve.
Yeah.
Steve also, he was the first brother who played football at Georgia. And then my brother Rick was like the most friendly at Greenville High School. He was all of them are wonderful guys. But Rick was the kind of guy that you'd go onto the football field and he would like, he like stoke himself up to just license to just murder somebody out on
Yeah.
the football field, right?
Right.
And just was a maniac. Vince Dooley said of him that this is probably the hardest hitting player I've ever had,
Wow.
But he was smaller,
Yeah.
so he started on special teams, but he didn't. It was the suicide. He was like kamikaze kid. But so on the field, he was a terror.
Yeah.
But you walk off the football field, you could like hit him in the face with your fist, and he would be, "Oh man, that wasn't very nice. Why did you do that?" He was just and still is a very sweet spirit.
That's cool.
Isn't it interesting though that
Yeah.
you can stoke yourself up, and I mean you could see it in his face. It was scary stuff. But when you walked off the football field, my greatest fear in high school, literally, was I was a junior, he was a senior. Was when I was playing right cornerback on the defense, and when the defensive end when the offensive end missed turning the play inside, and Rick would come around the end with nobody having blocked, I mean, and it's just one-on-one Rick and me, and he didn't bother like juking you and running around you. He would just run straight over you.
Yeah, especially you, I would imagine.
And I don't even know, especially me. I mean, it wasn't like he was being mean to his little brother.
No?
He was like a freight train coming at you.
It's amazing.
And you'd bear down, and you knew you don't have to worry about him faking you off. You just got to brace for this is me and him. And he would just run right over you. And I might trip him up. Probably most of the time, if you're running hard at somebody, you'll lose your balance.
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
But not without a great penalty. You
awesome.
paid the price.
And what about your youngest brother?
My youngest brother, thank you, is Hal.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jimmy, David, Steve, Rick, Bob, and Hal. And the reason I can say those so easily is because when you're saying your prayers, and you say, "Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray thee, Lord, my soul you'll keep." Except it's, "I thank you, Lord." It should be, "I thank you, Lord, my soul you'll keep."
Yeah.
If I should die before I wake, I thank you, Lord, my soul you'll take. God bless Mom and Daddy and Jimmy and David, Steve and Rick and Hal. And make me a good boy. I mean, to get the prayer over, you always felt like, okay, got to say your prayers,
Yep.
And so it took about 15 seconds to say that prayer. You climb in bed, right? But Hal became a minister, which there might be a story later on in that is how that came to be. And he is just a remarkable minister he started Reformed University Fellowship at Vanderbilt University and pretty well drove those guys crazy because he was lovable guy and they loved him, but he was brilliant theologically, and they would try to take him down, I hate to say, and they were not prepared for him.
Yeah.
And in public situations where they'd have debates and stuff like that, where it was almost like a setup to take him down. And after the discussion would be over, all the students are gathered around him to see what he had to say further, and the other professors would be over in a corner talking amongst themselves.
That's
so he's
cool.
a remarkable guy. Now he is a minister in Athens, Georgia.
Okay.
At the catty corner to the University of Georgia, interestingly enough.
That's very fun. So you enjoyed music. You were musically involved in school. You played football. Any other major interests at that time?
Well, I was actually the president of the student body when the integration thing happened in Greenville, South Carolina.
Wow.
And, the lower state, they were having flag burnings and the riotous stuff was going down because when the issue came up to get rid of the Dixie song, "I Wish I Was in the Land of Cotton."
Yeah.
They were like, "We're not getting rid of that song." And so all hell broke loose down there. And then they wanted to do that in the upstate. So, okay, that is exposing the whatever they wanted to be exposed.
Yeah.
And so that it started at Greenville High School, and we started having, all sorts of disruptive stuff going, fights. And so the principal came to me one day and said, I have no control over this situation. They're not listening to me. I'm an adult. They're not going to listen. They need to listen to one of their peers. And so I think you need to somehow talk to these students. And I said, well, what do you want me to say? He said, so it's up to you all. What do you want to do about this scenario we have? Because they're wanting to get rid of that song. What do y'all want to do? And of course, I'm thinking, I never quite understood that, because 2 weeks before, we were all out on the gym floor at the pep rally, black and white alike, dancing out on the floor to that song.
Right.
Just shucking and jiving out there on the gym floor.
Yeah.
And so I went to Joel Patterson, our Young Life leader, who was one of my best friends to this very day. And I told him the situation, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, what do you feel like? I said, well, if they're sincere, we should get rid of the song. But do I know if they're sincere? I have no real idea.
Yeah.
So he said, well, what is your gut reaction? I said, well, my gut would be, who am I to say they're not sincere? And he said, well, then I've got a great scripture for you. If meat offends my brother, then I will not eat meat. So we had the assembly. There was a big walkout planned. And so I challenged we call them blacks then. African American was not a deal then. So the proper thing to say is the black students. So I'm appealing to our fellow black students here to say that I hope you're sincere about this. Because if you're not, that's not a very funny thing to do.
Right.
But I'm presuming that you are, and I pray that you really are.
Yeah.
And I am appealing to the rest of us to say that, and I read that scripture, if meat offends my brother, then I will not eat meat. And so I'm going to recommend on behalf of our student body that we be willing to love our brothers and sisters and be willing to get rid of the song.
Yeah.
And instead of this massive walkout, maybe 6 or 7 people walked out, and this is out of 2,000.
Wow.
And so, in a sense, you could say, well, you won the day. You kept peace, and then it was a national news that this is the way you should handle these situations. Right? So, okay, well, that sounds good. 2 weeks later, I'm in the restroom, standing at the urinal, and Sherwood. Thompson? No, is that Sherwood? Yeah, Sherwood Thompson.
Okay.
Was his name. And we were good friends, right? So he pulls up next to me. And I said, so Sherwood, is everything okay now? You know what he said? Oh, man, when those people left from the north, left our churches, everything was fine anyway. And then I went, oh my, I have been a pawn in something much bigger than Sherwood or me or any at Greenville High, a much bigger picture. And I realized that I had been part of something. And so my guard, having been used like that,
Right.
has always been up. At the same time, I will still contend it is best to really try to read where somebody's heart is. And one of the struggles I have with a lot of what's going on in America now is I'm not sure whether somebody's heart is in a lot of the political stuff that we have going on, or whether they're just caught up in the popularity of the flow of where things go among society, as opposed to really thinking through. And yet I do see, I see some people on both sides really thinking through some of these arguments. But to shut down the dialogue that's going on, like at Berkeley, and they won't let people come on campus because they've got the wrong point of view, that is very scary stuff, and we had better stop it.
Yeah.
And this thing with Facebook and people like that, you hear story after story where they're shutting down people that don't agree with what they're doing. We better hope that somebody comes up against that in a strong way, because if we don't, there could be a tipping point where it becomes extremely almost impossibly difficult to come up against
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Anyway, how's that for a third rabbit trail? You
was
asked
good.
me how to make a watch, and I told you no. You asked me what time it was, and I told you how to build a watch. Right.
That was good. When did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school in 1970.
Okay.
So I'm a pretty old guy,
That's not what
especially for the entertainment business.
What did you go straight to college? What did you do after
I
that?
went to Furman University.
Okay.
My junior year, I went on a choir tour of all things to Brazil,
Oh wow.
and talked my close friend Mike Hudson into going and auditioning, and he got in as well. And it was a concert group, so it was like only 30 people in the thing. And so we toured Brazil. We went up the Amazon River, and I loved those people. And I had this vision that I would like to be a missionary up the Amazon River. I came back to Furman University, which is where I went to school, and decided that in addition to just starting a mission up the Amazon River, I would like to try to do something to protect the documents that validated the reality of not only the existence of Jesus Christ, but the validity of his claims. Because I actually, at Furman, had students that would say stuff like that. Well, how do you know he's not just a legend? Or stuff like that. And I was incredulous. You
Right.
can't, how could any serious historian, there are more documents that indicate that there was someone named Jesus Christ by far than Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
And any number of ancient people. And Marco Polo, I think there's like one document that tells us that there was a Marco Polo that made that trip to Asia. And this was during the God is Dead movement back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a dual idea about going up the Amazon River to I wanted to have printing presses that we could collect ancient documents, make millions of copies of these things, and disseminate them around the world. And that was my idea, and I knew it would take millions to do that. So when I came back to Furman, I thought, well, my mother's an amazing genius musician, and I've got enough of her genes that I can probably have a shot at the music industry. And we were writing songs. Mike Hudson, this same guy, went to Brazil with. And we came to Nashville with a whole slew of songs that we had written, and it was Simon and Garfunkel guitar piano duos. Duo, right? Yeah, duo stuff. And then I also played the piano. So we would do some piano guitar and some guitar. But it was really tightly woven, kind of like Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
And we came to Nashville, had an opportunity to play for Rory Burke, who was the co-writer for If You Happen to See the Most Beautiful Girl in the World.
Okay.
Tell her I love her. Great song.
Yep.
And we played for him, and we played 2 songs, and we got in the middle of the 3rd song, and we could tell he's kind of impatient about it, and he stopped us in the middle, and we didn't think he was going to say, we'd practiced way too hard, and we were far too tight to think that he was going to say, y'all are no good.
Right.
But we didn't expect this. He stopped us in the middle. I thought he was going to say, you guys are not country. What are you doing in Nashville? And he said, geez, you guys are great, man. He's from Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
And I said, you guys are great. And I want you to play for Henry Hurt. And so we went into chapel music right across the aisle there.
Wow.
And we played our stuff. And Henry Hurt said, what do you want to do with these guys? And he said, I want to produce them. And we're like, are you kidding me? We just walked in here. And so he said, but you've never produced anybody. He said, yeah, but I want to produce these guys, right? So bottom line, we did this album, and we were supposed to be the next Simon or Garfunkel. The review came out. It was really positive. And as soon as that album came out, disco hit. Isn't that crazy?
Oh.
And so Simon and Garfunkel went away along with James Taylor and Dan Fogelberg and
Yep.
Carole King and all these people that were in that 1975 period,
Yeah.
and it just got overshadowed by disco. And of course, some people, James Taylor, they came back.
Yeah.
Paul Simon came back,
Yeah.
but for a while, you couldn't play dead unless you were doing disco, and we had no interest in doing that, whatever.
Right.
So that's how we got started in the music industry. And maybe one footnote to this would be, well, why didn't you leave and do what's your vision? So I was talking to our landlord at the time, who was drunk, and he said, I would have told you his name, but now that I said that, I have to be anonymous. But he was a dear guy, and I told him that I was thinking about going back to Greenville and selling life insurance for my dad as an estate planner, and then it just take longer to raise the money, obviously.
Right.
But I still wanted to do the vision. And he said, "Baby, let me tell you something, buddy. You're gonna go back to Greenville, South Carolina, and you're gonna be selling life insurance for your daddy. And one day you're gonna wake up about 3 years later and say, what the hell am I doing down here in Greenville selling life insurance? And baby, you're going to come right on back. You're going to come back and you got to start all over. And you got an album, you got friends, you got a great church you go to, man. I mean, you don't need to be leaving. You need to stay right here, buddy." And so I didn't think about it much at that time, but I started thinking, you know what? He might be right. And along with those thinking along those lines, my wife at the time said, I'm having health issues and stuff. I don't think I can do the Brazil thing anyway. So that kept me in Nashville.
Okay.
And needed to make a living because I was getting ready to get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
To her. She was my fiance at the time, and decided to stay and got involved in commercials with a guy at our church. And did that for about a year and had a lot of luck doing that, and decided to do it on my own.
And when you say commercials, you mean jingle work?
Oh yeah,
Doing the
at the time, yeah,
behind.
we do film and music then, but it was specifically, people don't even know what a jingle is anymore. We don't really write jingles anymore. It's all groove oriented stuff. But those are the days where any other putter, putter's gonna put it in a puddle of. But a putter is a much better putter, 'cause putt makes it fun. So putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun of it. So bring your date and your brother or your mate and your mother and putt a hole in one. Putt makes it fun. So putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun of it, putt for the fun, putt for the fun, putt for the fun of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and that ran for 23 years. Probably halfway put them out of business because they should have moved on.
Right.
We got an award-winning spot.
Yeah.
So those silly things, they call those jingles for those out there who literally may not even know what that is now.
Yeah.
And there was a huge industry for it.
Yeah.
At that time, every company had a company song, and it was amazing. How many people did it. And when you did it at the national level, which we did a ton of it at the national level, it was very lucrative and was good income for a lot of people that were waiting tables, and they were able to go to Hummingbird and make a living that way.
Yeah. So you got started into that in the mid-'70s?
70. Oh, one thing, I know exactly when it was. October 31st, 1976 was the first trip I made to Atlanta to start Hummingbird.
Wow.
To go to advertising agencies to see if they would give us a shot.
That's cool. October 31st, huh?
Yeah, Halloween.
Did you go in costume? Huh? Did you go in costume?
Of course. Yeah. My 3-piece suit.
That's right. So you got married at about the same time?
Yeah, I got married, and that started in 76. The very next year, 77, got married then.
And
she helped start the jingle company.
Sure. Yeah. When did kids start coming around?
Not till I was 32.
Okay.
And that was
84.
83.
83.
Good. Pretty close
Okay.
here. That was an incredible experience for me because my wife at the time was not ready for children, and I'd waited, and I waited. I was 5 years older than she was,
Yeah.
and I was 32, and one day I put a little boy on my lap, and I started just tearing up, and I go, why am I tearing? This is so sad. But this voice inside says, you're tearing up because you have loved to give a little boy like this, and some child deserves your love. And I shared that with her that night. I said, I'm not even trying to say anything toward you, but I'm just saying that whenever you are ready, I now know that I'm very ready. I mean, I was ready, but I didn't talk about it.
Right.
But at that point, I thought I should probably tell you this experience I had. That night she didn't do anything. And then she told me that the very next day she thought, what am I doing? She let her guard down. That's when we had, in God's providence, we had our son. And believe me, when we had him, she was awfully glad for that moment, because she immediately just treasured him. And children are fantastic. Just seeing little Vivian.
Yep.
What a joy she is.
Most of the time.
That's right. I get it. You got 4. That's wonderful.
There are moments.
Yeah.
Tell me about life in the music industry, in commercial music. People have an idea of what the, making albums and all that stuff is typically like. So how is it different in commercial music?
Well, first I should probably say that I did not even know what a jingle was. Somebody came to me and said, hey, didn't y'all do some stuff, the jingle for Opryland? And I went, well, yeah, well, our company, and this was with the other guy, actually, said, we did some music for them, but what do you mean, the jingle? And they said, Bob, that's what a jingle is. You don't know what it is that you do? And as far as I knew, it was just music for a company. But so that's how naive I was about the industry at the beginning. But what I didn't even know what an ad agency was. When you saw Coca-Cola up on a billboard, I just thought Coca-Cola did that. I didn't understand the whole kind. And I feel stupid, but this is going through Furman University 4 years. And it just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
And when I realized that advertising agencies do that, and at an advertising agency, you have a creative director who oversees writers, and the writers come up with a campaign, and they all decide what the campaign line is going to be.
Right.
Coke is it. And then once you've decided on what that line is, then you make commercials. And in a commercial, there is what you see and what you hear.
Right.
And so we were doing the what you hear part of that, at least the music side of that. And sometimes that was music only, where you do what you call a post-score. Mm-hmm. You're scoring after the film has been done.
Yep.
And we would make music for it, or we would write a jingle for it, and then they would cut the spot to the jingle.
Yeah.
And the part of the big deal about that is you would have one jingle, and they would do hundreds of videos. So the jingle was for the king, because it was the centerpiece for all of that. And it would be that the core of that jingle would be the theme line, which would carry on for 2 or 3 years.
Right. And hopefully be the thing that people are singing along later on.
They're one of a kind. No, we're one of a kind. We're Cabbage Patch Kids. You can give them all of your love. Or skip it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was in California one time, and my kids were introducing their dad as the guy whose company did the sound design for the Bud Frogs.
Yep.
And he was waiting for some, you are kidding me, your dad did. Yeah. But they just sort of looked at him, and he said, well, also he did like, skip it. No way, man. These are kids his age, right? Yep. What was the other one that they that was out there that was it ends with more fun than a pillow fight. sock 'em boppers, yeah. Sock 'em boppers, sock 'em boppers, And then at the end, I had this voiceover on there that I did just to show them where the voiceover
Yeah.
lay, and it was, at the end, they're more fun than a pillow fight, right?
Right.
So I did this really fake, more fun than a pillow fight, just totally fake. And when we came the time to do the voiceover, I said to the client, "Okay, now what are you looking for as far as a voiceover?" And that kind of, he said, "What you already got there." I said, "No, that's just me messing around. I'm just joking around." What, seriously? He said, "No, seriously, that's what we're going to use. That's what we like." And I've had quite a few things happen like that.
Yeah.
Like the Shoney's thing, sort of clowning around and going, "Oh, that's good." And they go, "That's it. That's it." I had another thing with Applebee's. And it was a campaign they were using around one of the hit songs, and which we do a good bit of that as well. Somebody does a hit song and you change up the lyrics and they buy the rights to do a parody on it, that kind of stuff. But it was like summertime, 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 Applebee's, summertime, summertime. What, like kind of the innocent voice I'm using right there.
Yeah.
And so I sent them the demo, and they said, "Well, okay, so are y'all going to bill us now?" I was like, "Well, wait, we got to put the voice on there. That was just a demo." They went, No. That's what we're going to use.
You nailed it in one.
No, come on. That's not what. Please don't do that. Because you never perceive that your voice is right. You probably listen back to your radio interviews and go, "I sound terrible," but I will tell you, you don't. You sound great. I do. This will sound. Well, a fairly funny thing about hearing ourselves is that at first it sounds terrible. Mm-hmm. And then you get used to it, and then you start listening to yourself about as objectively as you would anybody else, and it doesn't sound so terrible.
Yeah. It takes time, though.
Yeah. It does. But like if somebody, I'm sure haven't you had people go, "Oh gosh, I sound awful," right?
Yes.
Because I'm very much Southern. I lived in Chicago 2 years, and those guys said, "Farnsworth, this whole town will to be speaking Southern before you speak Northern." I said, "That's right," and I'm proud of that. Yeah, I don't have any apologies about being a Southerner.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun because Northerners are often caught off guard by Southerners that you'll be in a discussion with them, and it's almost like they're surprised that you're not only keeping up with what they're talking about, but they're, "Wait a minute, I'm not sure I'm following him on this," or whatever. And it's kind of fun to see people when they really think you're literally smoking a corncob pipe and you're barefooted and all that funny stuff. I know it. That's a little extreme. But when I started in the business, it really was not necessarily that. That was not necessarily
that's not an exaggeration. That's true.
It's true.
Absolutely. I'm going to divert you.
That's fine.
We're going to go back to family and stuff. You're having kids. How many do you have total?
We have a son, and I have 2 wonderful twin daughters.
Oh, wow.
And then just to kind of catch it up, my wife left me 25 years ago or so, and then I was single for 15 years, and then met my wife and her friends when her husband left her. Her friends would say, "Well, look, don't be don't go to the wrong places to find date somebody." And they were like pleading with her, and she sort of said, "Well, what am I supposed to do? Find him on the church pew?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, maybe. That wouldn't be a bad idea." Well, that's exactly what happened on the church pew.
That's great.
Isn't that cute? Would you like me to tell you the story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is kind of a cute story. We are sitting there, and she looks at me and says, "So," she's got a Western Tennessee kind of accent. She says, "So in the next 60 seconds before the church service starts, why don't you tell me what you're all about?" So I'm thinking,
an elevator pitch.
I hope I get this right, because this girl is just wonderful and cute, and and so I started in on Hummingbird Productions. This is our company, and and started in on the music business thing. I mean, 15 seconds into my explanation of, quote, what I'm all about, I wanted to throw up on myself. Like, that is so not what I'm all about, right? But then sure enough, as she said, the church service started.
Yep.
And the sermon, the whole time I'm thinking, God, why did that's not what and that's not what I'm all about. And the sermon was on Jesus healing the blind man. And the point he was making was that the blind man did not heal himself of blindness. He was given his sight. And would there be any chance that this blind guy would come back and start criticizing the other guys for still bumping into the walls? Because they would say, whoa, wait a minute here now. That guy came by and he gave you your sight. Did you do anything to get your sight?
Right.
He said, not a thing. He said, well, then how in the world would you be, condescending us for the fact that we're still blind?
Yeah.
And he said, but that's what we do with people spiritually all the time. We're given the opportunity to see the love of Christ, and then we turn around and are condescending towards someone else who has not experienced that. How dare us? And there was enough of myself I was seeing in that to where I was tearing up. And then we sang Amazing Grace. Right? I was blind, but now I see. And so I'm a bit of a basket case, which I was way beyond worrying about her at that point. I was much more concerned about me and who I was, and or who I wasn't. And I turned to her and I said, can we start all over? And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, you asked me what I'm all about, and I told that music business tripe, that's not what I'm all about. That's what I'm all about. And I pointed at the pulpit.
Yeah.
And I said, I was blind, but now I see. And she immediately just gushed tears, almost like, I've always wanted a man to tell me that,
Right, yeah.
And she said, that's what I'm all about. I was blind, but now I see. And that was where our relationship started.
Wow.
What a place to start, right?
Yeah.
And especially kind of starting in a place that you go down the wrong path and you immediately get to experience forgiveness from the other person. You immediately have to forgive yourself for your own naivete and short-sightedness. So it started in a place of brokenness and humility, and it kept on going into this day. When we're struggling with something, my wife will grab me by the arm and pull me to the floor and say, we just need to pray about that. Not every time, but,
Yeah.
But it's a place of going, that's what I'm really about, is a brokenness before a God who loves me.
Yeah.
And that's good news. That's the gospel. That's good news. Who wants to hear a gospel that's, here's all this stuff you have to perform,
Right.
as opposed to we love God because he first loved us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
So tell me about parenting. You said you were single for 15 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so your kids were probably mostly grown and gone by the time you got remarried?
Yes, but all the time I was divorced, I mean, as a matter of fact, my daughter, Becca Reed, wrote the most amazing, what would be the word for it, essay for entering University of California at San Diego. And if I told her, if I were somebody at that school and I read your essay, I would have thought, who is this girl? Get her out here. She's completely unique. And she did. She ended up going out there as an out-of-stater, which is tough to do out there. But she wrote an essay, and in there she talked about what it was like being the daughter of a person who owned a jingle company.
Yeah.
And she talked about on Friday nights, they would be thinking, Saturday, we can sleep in. And then at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, boom, 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 chikonka, boom. You know, this blaring drums, and somebody's warming up on the drums,
Right.
and they come in and it's like, ah.
Yeah.
But the funny things that they were able to tell, and how she interfaced that with sort of life lessons, what she learned from that, and you're going, oh, this girl is out there in a coolest kind of way. But yeah, it was a strange time raising children in that kind of an environment. But we did. Our little thing was love is the answer. Love is the answer. And so if any of the kids were arguing with each other and they'd come wanting me to be the referee, I would say, girls, y'all tell you what, love is the answer. Y'all go discuss that. And if you still have a problem, come back and I'll be your referee. Never come back.
Wow.
Yeah, they would never come back.
I need to try that.
Yeah, it's actually,
That's good.
it's very effective. And of course, after college, one day, one of my daughters said, well, Dad, at some point you sort of have to define what love is, don't you? And I said, well, shall I tell you what I think love is? And she said, well, sure. And I said, if I were to speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I don't have love, I'm just a sounding brass or a noisy tinkling cymbal.
Yeah.
And if I had the gift of prophecy, and I just went through the 1 Corinthians 13, and I got to the end of it, she said, Dad, that is beautiful. Where did you get that? And I said, well, my darling, that is from this book called the Bible.
I'll ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
What are you afraid of?
I sometimes fear finances because I'm at a time in my life where I don't need to make much at this point. Very unlike another point in my life,
Yeah.
I've put my children through school and all that sort of stuff. So I sometimes fear finances. But when I see what God has done through the years, I can't say I'm petrified by that. I fear that if we shut down free speech in our country, much more than we already are doing, that we could go down a very frightening course.
Mm-hmm.
I think socialism is a manifestation of that. And I look at world history and I see here's a system that does not have a good track record at all. And even in places like Denmark or something, they would say where you're socialistic and it's successful. The king of, in Denmark, they say, wait, no. We are socialistic to the degree that capitalism funds our socialism.
Yeah.
And in all the Scandinavian countries, which are normally used as an example of how socialism works, those people will tell you, well, it was working great as long as we were a homogeneous people.
Yeah.
And we have a very Germanic sort of work attitude. And you're a dog if you don't work here. So everybody got that attitude. Everybody kind of pitching in. Sure, it's like an insurance policy. Fair enough. But that's not the way it is there now.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it is in Europe now. And that's never been the way it is in America. So you're never going to get the circumstances that would require socialism to truly work. And I would also say that what they say in Denmark about it's successful to the degree, and other people have said this is certainly not original on my part, but socialism is successful to the degree that it is underwritten by capitalism. So if you're doing great in capitalism and you got money to spare, what you do if you're really working it, then you've got money that you can help the poor with and that sort of stuff, that you can even do something like welfare. But otherwise, it is not a self-perpetuating thing.
What do you regret?
Nothing. And the reason I don't is because I'm very providential in my thinking. I go to Presbyterian Church, PCA, Presbyterian Church, and it is a conservative denomination. And so I would ascribe to the joke about the Presbyterian guy that falls down the stairs and busts his buns and he kind of dusts himself off and says, man, am I glad to get that one over with. So I sort of believe that there's a great paradox between choice and sovereignty.
Hmm.
Clearly, if I decided to stop talking, I could stop talking. I have a choice to do that. Well, maybe I would have a hard time doing
Yeah.
that. But it could be done. I could choose to not talk. So then you go, well, if you can make those kind of clear choices, then it must be a mystery that God is still sovereign over every molecule in the world, in the universe. Or you can, so that seems obvious. Or you can flip that and go, well, what's obvious? If there is a God at all, and he's not in charge of every synapse that fires in somebody's brains, and if he's not over every molecule that's moving around in the world, then it may be a little bit of a dangerous universe, because I don't know if he's got it all under control. So then the mystery becomes, how can I actually have a body that's moving around millions and millions of cells by the virtue of my brain, and say that God is truly sovereign? I'm making these choices. You go, there is the mystery, right? So on the one hand, God is sovereign, and it's a mystery that we have choices. Or on the other hand, we have choices, and it's a mystery that God's sovereign. Now, people kill themselves trying to figure that out. They wear themselves out, and so have I.
Right.
But it kind of occurs to me that if I ask you what's the end of numbers, you pretty quickly go, I don't have any idea. And you're able, it's so obvious you don't know the answer to that, you let it go. And yet we will try to figure out God's mind as if we have to answer that in order for both of those things to paradoxically be true.
Right.
But having said that they seem to be equally true,
Yeah.
which seems to be a great paradox, and you have to ascribe that to the mystery of God that I don't never understand. I will never understand that. I think one can also say at the same time that the Bible tends to lean on the side of God's sovereignty. And if I'm going to miss it one way or the other, I'd say I'm going to lean on that. And therefore, whatever has happened in my past, going back to your question,
Yeah.
whatever has happened in my past, I go, yeah, that was all in God's plan. I mean, even the bad stuff, somehow, he didn't cause it. I don't understand it, but in some mysterious way, he permitted it. And so even in something like divorce, and it's sad, it's a heartbreak and all that, incredible heartbreak. I am not the person that I would have been had everything rock and roll my way. So what do I regret? It's a great question, but I think I can't really say anything. It's always, where do I go from here?
This one's easy because you've already answered it about 4 times. Who is God?
He is the creator of the universe. He is triune, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he is good. And he is always good. And if you want to ask the eternal question of, well, if God is good, why is there such evil in the world? Then I will equally ask you the converse of that question. If God is not good, then why is there such love in the world? He is good.
That's it. Thank you, Bob.
It was absolute joy. Thank you, brother.
And that's it. That's all. Okay, so once again, those 3 questions strike. I love it. It's so cool. Sometimes people hear those questions and they can give one-word answers, and it's a direct answer to the question, and that's it. And then other times, I ask those questions and we are off to the races. It's so much fun for me to see which way these things go, and I love, love, love hearing people's different responses. I've never had anybody sing that much on the show. In fact, I don't think I've had anybody sing at all on the show. Bob showed up. We'd never met before. He came to my house, and the second person he met here was my daughter, who just could not stand the fact that there was somebody in the house that she hadn't said hi to yet. And so she made herself seen. And it was less than a couple of minutes before she had plopped herself down in his lap, and he was teaching her how to draw different cartoon characters, and they had a big time. It took me a while to pry him away for that interview. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming in again. If you are interested in his work or want to connect with him, maybe you have a commercial project that you need some music for, swing by their website, hummingbirdproductions.com. Not only can you see their work, you can see their past work. I guarantee you, it'll take you 2 minutes on their website and you will find a jingle or a commercial that you remember clearly. It's shocking how well those things stick in your brain, even all these years later. Also, if you would like to hear his TED Talk, it's called Hearing is Believing, you should swing by the YouTubes and look it up over there. Bob Farnsworth, TED Talk, should find it no problem. You can contact me through the email link at the bottom of the website, or you can check out and connect with two of the gentlemen that have helped make this show possible, those being Mr. Casey Jones. He's down there at the bottom. He's the designer that makes us look good, and Mr. Jace Hackman, who has provided all of our bumper music. You can also connect with us on Facebook or Instagram, both of those being But Enough About Me Podcast. Or just drop me an email, tyler@butenoughAbout.me. Further, we would love to hear your feedback publicly. So feel free to go by iTunes. That's the only place I know of where you can rate a podcast. Go by iTunes and leave a review. We love those 5-star reviews, but even more, we like when you say nice things in a comment. That helps the Apple algorithm find the episodes and share them with people who might be interested in similar topics. So when you talk about, I don't know, biographies and a particular struggle that someone might have or something like that, that's how it looks at those keywords and goes, oh, people should listen to this. Have I mentioned recently that I'm really, really thankful for you guys? All right, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, I want to give you guys my hot take on coronavirus. See, the way I see... No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that. We may not be able to see each other face to face, and you may not be able to buy someone a cup of coffee or a glass of whiskey, but you can do a video chat with them. So I encourage all of you, now is a great time to call someone and ask them to tell you their story. My special little secret hint, if both of you put on headphones and you're both looking at each other, it really does connect you and feel more, not completely, but more like you're in the same space. And it's a really great way to be able to hear someone's story. It feels much more intimate and connected. All right, that's it. That's for real. That's it. Thank you guys so much. It is a privilege and honor to get to share these stories with you. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. My name is Tyler Andrews, but enough about me.